On January 29, 2015, the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee held a hearing on the LNG Permitting Certainty and Transparency Act. This is Natural Gas 102 and a 5-minute recap. Now, when U.S. companies first started thinking about exporting natural gas a few years ago, their applications wound up all caught in a tangle at the Department of Energy. After a few fits and starts, the DOE has now settled into a process which was explained by Chris Smith, who is the person in charge of running the show over at DOE.
The way the department's operating is that there are two important things that a particular exporter needs in order to build a plant. They need to have authorization from FERC that shows that they can build the plant in a way that's safe, so they have to be able to build the plant. Then they also need authorization from the Department of Energy to actually export the molecules, and those two together create a project. Our process now says that we look at a particular an applicant after it's completed that FERC process to demonstrate that they can actually build the plant safely. In that aspect, we've moved very quickly. Essentially, as soon as these projects have come out of the queue, as soon as or out of the FERC process, we've moved very quickly. And in the case of one of the applicants, we acted the next day, within 22 hours.
The DOE seems to feel like they've cleared up this process a little bit, but a couple senators would like just a little more certainty.
This bill would expedite the permitting process for LNG exports. It would require the Secretary of Energy to make a final decision on an export application within 45 days after FERC completes the environmental review process. In addition, the bill would provide for expedited judicial review of legal challenges to LNG export projects. Finally, the bill requires exporters to publicly disclose the countries to which LNG is being delivered.
And the big headline from the hearing is that the DOE said they could comply with this bill if it got passed.
Your testimony states that this legislation is, quote, not necessary. Secretary Moniz has made very clear that he wants to work through this process, but I worry that perhaps a future Secretary of Energy might not be as favorable to LNG exports as we have seen coming out of this Secretary and the administration. So the question that I would ask you very directly is whether or not you think S-33, as it is written, is workable and achievable.
Yes, Senator. Again, if this is the legislation that's passed in its current form, that we can comply with the regulation.
I appreciate that.
The committee rolled out some familiar faces to testify on the bill.
This is a bill that the NAM supports. At NAM, we applaud the DOE for taking a hard look at the inefficiencies within its own process and trying to fix them. And while 2 license decisions happened relatively quickly after the new procedures went in place, we once again do find ourselves in a situation where the approvals are starting to lag. For Cove Point, a project that received conditional approval as far back as 2013, we're now approaching the end of the 4th month of deliberations on a final license.
America's Natural Gas Alliance strongly supports S-33 as a means to establish a timely and certain review process for LNG export facilities.
U.S. LNG would provide a reliable and competitive alternative to the allies in Central and Eastern Europe.
IECA is not opposed to LNG exports. However, today, there is no energy public policy decision more important than whether or not to approve an LNG export facility for 20 to 30 years.
Most Republicans and some Democrats were on board.
And it's not too often that we share in these kinds of opportunities where you have a bipartisan bill that will create jobs, create energy security, add to our national security all at the same time, something that I wish we could do more of.
I co-sponsored this bill because I believe it will help stimulate job opportunities for my state's gas industry while fully preserving both FERC's environmental and safety reviews and DOE's determination of public interest.
Some Democrats are on the fence.
I want to be clear. I like natural gas, and I definitely like exports, but I like something even better than those two. I like cheap domestic sources of energy.
But some Democrats remain flat out opposed.
So I'm desperately concerned about manufacturing jobs.
This does my state no good whatsoever.
I cannot understand this discussion that will inevitably lead to higher energy costs.